Welcome to another episode of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm Jacqueline Cox, and today we are at the Applewood property at 215 Judiciary Street in Aurora, Indiana. And today we are talking with the current owner, Doug Holland. Doug, welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us here today. Can you tell us a little bit about the property?
Well, originally there was an Oddfellows Hall built in 1848.
Oddfellows Hall? That's odd. What's that?
Well, it was a fraternal order of people, local people, and they did charity work and tried to just improve situations. And the unique thing is they were co-ed back in the 1800s. They were developed in America, 1700s in England. So most towns had an Oddfellows Hall, and it was just a group that tried to help the local society.
That's wonderful. So we're going to keep the tradition going here in Aurora, Indiana. So tell us a little bit more.
Well, there was a group in the early 70s that wanted to make a very unique and fancy restaurant property. They bought the Oddfellows Hall, they bought the building next to it, and decided to add a third section on, which was new, but using these same materials that were in the first two buildings. And they really did a good job. Their problem, and they opened, and it was a wonderful restaurant. Food was great, service was great. The problem they had was that there was a lot of construction overruns, and interest rates at that time had gotten up to 18%,
yeah.
And they were over $1 million borrowed. And so prices of food then, they could not meet the overheads. So after a couple of years, they went out of business, and then the SBA got the property into foreclosure.
Oh my goodness gracious. So tell us a little bit more about the name of Applewood.
Well, Applewood, they used that name because they had a unique way of grilling their steaks. They would use Applewood chips, and the smoke from the Applewood chips would flavor the steak and other grilled meats, and that was one of their very unique things, and it was a wonderful taste for the food.
Just really get that essential Applewood flavor and things. So you purchased the property in 1982, a couple years after the SBA took over. So what did you do with the property, and what condition was it in?
It was not in a very good condition. The SBA had done nothing. They just left it vacant. The people that had owned it just moved out. After a couple years, they had left the meat in the freezers. That was still in. They had to be cleaned out. They didn't drain the water pipes for 2 winters. It had been vandalized. And so I just came in. I started by fixing the water lines, and the only way you could do that is you turn the water on, close all the lines off but one, follow that line until it leaked, shut the water off, take the covering off the pipe, solder it up, cut the leak out, solder it up, fix it, go back, do it again. And I did it for mostly during the winter, and it was like 2 degrees warmer inside than it was out, and then you'd have to get up in the ceilings and that to fix those. Probably been places that even cats can't get to.
Right.
And then you'd lay in the water and fix them. And usually I'd fix like 2 or 3 a night, and then I'd go home. And then of course had to repaint it and get everything up and going. And that took us about a year and a half. Right. And then after we got it up, Gloria and I did wedding receptions for 10 years. And that was quite a bit of fun. But it was a lot of work.
Yeah, weddings can be hard sometimes.
Yes.
So the Applewood hosted weddings and receptions for 10 years. What happened after that 10 years?
Well, a group came in, they wanted to rent it and open it as a restaurant, which sounded great. And in fact, they did it for 20 years. 20 years. And after 20 years, they decided to retire. And there was a couple other groups that came in that did not last even a year each. And so I've decided just to fix it up, did a lot of repairs, and get it ready for resale.
So tell us about some of the improvements you've made to Applewood.
Well, originally we bought it, they had just limestone chips in the back, and we brides wanted a place to dance. So we put some pavers down and brought a carpet out, and that worked pretty well, so we kept improving that. And in fact, the library was taking down the law office across from where I work, and they had a lot of limestone window sills and that, and I went over and talked to the contractor of what he was doing with those. He's just taking them to their landfill.
Okay.
And kind of asked him what would happen if he put all the limestone sills off to the side and didn't have to remove them. They'd just disappear. And he thought for $50 that probably would happen. And so it did. And we've used all their limestone to surround the brick. It was from the McManaman Law Office in Lawrenceburg.
So it's a little $50 well spent there.
Well, it was, and then of course we were on very tight budget and we did everything that way, but then our renter had put in a tiki bar next to the building and they did quite a few improvements. And also besides having the Applewood property, I bought the parking lot next to it, or the land next to it, made a parking lot, bought the land across 2nd Street. We got the city to vacate Water Street down to the river, so now we own that. So now it's 1.4 acres of complete property.
Sounds like you've put a lot of heart and hard work into the property.
We have. It's been 40 years.
40 years. 40 years and still going for now. So I've noticed, Doug, that the Applewood property is located on the banks of the Ohio River. Has it ever flooded?
Well, of course it has. And in the 40 years I've owned it, it's flooded twice. 1997, it got to flood stage of about 64.5 feet,
wow, which
was 4 or a little more in the building. And then in 2018, it got to, I believe, 60.5 feet, which was about a foot in the building.
Wow.
And so only twice in 40 years. And then 1937 was the major flood, and it was at a flood stage of 80 feet.
Right.
So, but with the Markland Dam and the other dams they put in the Ohio River since then, they've got a lot more control over it. And also, I've fixed the building so if it does flood, we've put walls in that they easily disconnected, taken upstairs. After the flood, just wash out the cavities and replace it. So hopefully floods would not be much of an issue for an operation.
Right. Sounds like you've thought of everything.
Try to. It's been 40 years.
So Doug, I've been to quite a few weddings receptions in my day, and I bet you have some great stories for the 10 years that you ran wedding receptions. Can you tell us some?
Oh, yeah, there was very enjoyable. People were great. And we actually did quite a few weddings and the reception here, but mainly we did receptions and usually about 200 people. And one of the things we did for the bridal group is I found a Rolls Royce in Lexington at one of the plantations and purchased it, and it originally had been in the Royal Fleet.
Oh, wow.
And so we took a year and fixed that up and had it ready and provided that to the bridal group, that we'd bring the bride and the groom from the church to the Applewood for the reception, and they'd have kind of usually make a pretty good thing of the car riding up with them.
Right.
And then when they were ready to leave, we would take them to wherever their destination was. Also, you got to kind of see what kind of couple they were because of their conversation in the back seat.
Right.
And there was you could just tell that there'd probably be a long-term marriage.
Right.
And one of the best ones was my secretary at the time. Her daughter was getting married, and brought them, and they just talked so nice about everybody and each other and how everything went. You could tell that this was a marriage that there was a lot of love and really two good people. And in fact, they're 30 years later, they're still married.
Wow.
There was different instances. One, this bridal family had a group tradition where they would have a scavenger hunt. And the groomsmen would compete against the bridesmaids. And they would all go on their scavenger hunt fully dressed in their tuxedos and gowns and everything. And they would have to get unique items.
Okay.
And several of them were fairly racy. And then they'd come back with them, and it was a lot of fun because every time you got one thing, you had to come back and then to give you the note for the second one. So you didn't have a list. You
wow.
It was back and forth. And of course, everybody could enjoy the story when they got back.
Right. That sounds fun.
It was. And then probably the one where I thought the most of the bride was there was a young boy about 12 being bullied by other boys.
Oh, no.
And he climbed over the wall into her wedding reception, and he kind of crashed her party.
Oh, wow.
And you suspect most brides would be a little upset, but in fact, she just took him in our bar area and had husband, groom, get wash rags and cleaned him up, sent the bridesmen up to get him dinner. She took care of him, forgot all about herself. She was a keeper.
Right, what a big heart.
The other thing is, of course, the garter tossing, but getting the garter was always interesting and fun. And that was a lot of fun. Eating the cake, they always did quite a few things there.
Right.
And I've probably been able to witness over 100, a lot more than 100 chicken dances.
Oh, wow.
So it was very entertaining, but it was a lot of work. We'd start on Tuesdays. We'd show Applewood for the upcoming brides to see it. Wednesdays would be repair day, where we do major repairs and fix up, get it ready. Thursday, we'd go out and buy the food and that for 200 people.
Oh my goodness.
That would be serving. Fridays, of course, the bride and her group would come in, do the decorating. We do the chair setup and all those things for the event itself. Of course, Saturday was the event. I would have to get in my tux and get all ready to go pick up the bride and the groom.
So you were actually driving the roller.
Oh yeah. Well, nobody else would drive it.
Wow, that's a good
well,
experience.
You had to drive it. The wheel was on the other side of the car, so that was a little unique too, because you were in the passenger seat driving.
Wow.
And then Gloria, my wife, would take care of the bar, and then I had a real good group of cooks that did the meal, and we'd bring them in, then take them away, and of course it was like usually 2 in the morning. Sunday we'd come in and have to clean up after 200 people partied, so I'd take about 5 hours, take Monday off, Tuesday we start over, so your summers disappeared. So 10 years of it was a lot of fun, but it was enough.
Applewood was all in for the wedding receptions.
Yes, and I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. It was good for us and good for them.
So Doug, sounds like you have a lot of great memories here at Applewood Property. Applewood Property's been here for 175 years. Looks like it might be here for 175 more. Thank you for watching this episode of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm Jacqueline Cox, and remember, travel slowly and stop often.